So what if I told you the entire high-stakes, $100 billion race for AI just got completely upended? And not by one of the usual giants from Silicon Valley, but by a brand new startup with a price tag so low, it honestly sounds like a typo. Well, that's exactly what happened. And this is the story of that insane disruption.
Okay, let's just try to wrap our heads around these numbers for a second. On one hand, you have OpenAI's GPT-4. We're talking a training cost of over $100 million, a colossal investment, right? Then you've got DeepSeek's R1 model, which basically rivals GPT-4 in performance, and it was built for just $6 million. That is a staggering, almost unbelievable 94% cheaper.
So, this brings us to the absolute core question, right? How on earth did a company that basically didn't even exist a couple of years ago build a world-class AI for just a tiny, tiny fraction of what the biggest names in the industry are spending? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack right now. All right, so first up, we've got to meet the company behind this incredible feat. Let's get to know this underdog challenger coming out of Hangzhou, China.
So who exactly is DeepSeek? Well, they're a Chinese AI startup. And get this, they were only founded in 2023. The company is led by a guy named Liang Wenfeng, who also happens to head a hedge fund called High Flyer, so you know he's bringing some serious financial savvy to the table. They just exploded onto the scene in January 2025 with their R1 model, and their goal is, well, it's about as ambitious as it gets, to unravel the mysteries of AGI.
Now, when I say their ascent has been fast, I mean it's been incredibly fast. Think about it. Founded in 2023, launched a world-class model by early 2025. Just 1 month after that, the news was already shaking up tech stocks. That's how you know the market was taking them seriously. And they're not even close to being done. They've already got a more advanced AI planned for late 2025. The pace here is it's absolutely breathtaking.
Okay, so how in the world did they pull this off? This is the $6 million question, isn't it? Let's get into the secret sauce, the real magic that allowed DeepSeek to completely crack the cost code and build a super AI on a shoestring budget.
A huge part of their strategy comes down to something called a mixture of experts architecture, or MO for short. Now, the easiest way to think about it is like this. Your entire brain doesn't fire up for every single little thought, right? You just use the specific parts you need. Well, MO models do the exact same thing. They only activate the necessary expert bits of the AI network for whatever task is at hand. And for efficiency, this is an absolute game changer. It saves just an immense amount of computing power.
So here's how DeepSeek actually put that theory into practice. For one, they use something called multi-token prediction. It basically lets the AI guess multiple words ahead at once, which, as you can imagine, speeds things up dramatically. Of course, they lean super heavily on that partial model activation we just talked about. And here's the really crucial part. They were facing US restrictions on advanced computer chips. So what they do? They just engineered these brilliant, creative software workarounds to squeeze every last drop of performance out of the hardware they could get. It's truly a masterclass in optimization.
But here's the thing. DeepSeek isn't just focused on making today's AI cheaper. They're already building tomorrow's AI. And this brings us to the next massive leap forward. The rise of something called agentic AI. We're talking about moving way, way beyond simple chatbots and into the world of truly autonomous agents.
So what's the difference, really? Well, think of a traditional chatbot like a very helpful calculator. You ask it a question, it spits out an answer. Pretty simple. An agentic AI, though, that's more like a personal financial advisor. You don't give it a simple question. You give it a complex goal. And then it goes off and autonomously plans and executes a whole series of tasks to actually achieve that goal for you.
And here's how it actually learns. First, the agent gets a goal. Then it creates and carries out a plan. But here's where the real magic happens. It then analyzes the outcome of its own actions, and it uses that info to improve its strategy for the next time. It's this continuous feedback loop of learning and adapting, all on its own, without a person having to guide it every step of the way.
And look, this isn't some sci-fi fantasy we're talking about for decades down the road. DeepSeek is already building its next model, scheduled for the end of 2025, specifically for these kinds of agentic tasks. And they're targeting massive industries like finance and logistics. The real-world application is literally right around the corner.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit, because this breakthrough is way bigger than just one company. It is fundamentally reshaping the entire global AI race. We have to look at the ripple effects of making AI this powerful and this ridiculously cheap.
I mean, before DeepSeek came along, the cost to build an elite AI was this enormous, unbreakable wall. You had to be one of the wealthiest tech giants on the planet to even play the game. Well now, that wall has just been completely smashed to pieces. The field is suddenly wide open for a whole new wave of innovators to jump in.
And the global impact here is huge, and it's hitting on a few different fronts. First, you've got the democratization of AI. Suddenly, smaller companies can actually compete with the big dogs. Second, it's a massive geopolitical signal, really highlighting China's growing power in AI. And then, by making their models open source under the MIT license, DeepSeek is basically inviting the whole world to build on their work. All of this adds up to a fundamental disruption of the market, shifting power away from those established resource-heavy giants.
But of course, this kind of rapid progress comes with a pretty big catch. As one industry analysis put it, this new landscape demands vigilance in navigating the ensuing competitive and regulatory shifts. You know, in plain English, that just means when things change this much, this fast, we really have to be careful.
And it's only natural, right? When this much power becomes so easy to get your hands on, a whole bunch of new questions and concerns just pop up. Suddenly, we're talking seriously about data privacy, the ethics of autonomous AI, not to mention brand new security vulnerabilities, and that classic tricky challenge of making sure these things don't develop some kind of unintended bias.
And all of this leaves us with one final, and I think really crucial question to think about. When elite, potentially world-changing artificial intelligence becomes this powerful and this accessible to pretty much anyone, who's going to be the one to reap all the rewards? And maybe more importantly, who's going to be left bearing all the risk?